Welcome to PlotLines, where we'll use our over 30 years of experience in real estate communications to uncover the real stories behind real estate. I'm Heather Crowell.
And I'm Britni Acriveau. Dive in with us as we invite guests to break down the ever-changing landscapes of real estate together. All right, welcome back to PlotLines, a podcast all about writing headlines in the real estate space. We're joined here today by Jonathan Treble, the CEO of WithMe. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. All right. Well, Jonathan, I know you have such a great journey to founding WithMe, but can you share that with us and our viewers?
Absolutely. I started WithMe 10 years ago out of a personal need to print documents. I was living in an apartment in Chicago, and I think we can all relate to a time where you need to print something last minute, it's urgent.
Yeah.
And either you don't have a printer or your printer is broken, out of supplies. So like the story usually goes, I went to FedEx office, but that was far away from my apartment, and going there and back, I just realized there has to be a better way. Yep. And at the time I was working in hardware and software, and apps were all the rage. It was still pretty new because the iPhone wasn't that far along yet. And I just realized you could build a network of printer kiosks and have an application to rule them all. And I just thought, okay, well, that's a cool idea. Let me try that out. And that started PrintWithMe. PrintWithMe became WithMe about 7 years in when we added the coffee service, which we now call SipWithMe. And the umbrella company is WithMe. That's the common threads.
Okay. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the SipWithMe product.
The SipWithMe product is all about coffee. We put in a really high-end latte brewing machine. It does a lot of different drinks. And it's very similar to PrintWithMe in that we have taken a category for apartment buildings that was previously not very sophisticated, difficult for the site teams to manage. And we've brought our technology, our process, our know-how to that category and completely streamlined it and made it easy for our clients. I always get asked, why are you doing printing and coffee? Those seem like just weird two things to pick, but there's so many similarities when it comes to multifamily. They're both high demand amenities, and they were both problematic to manage for multifamily before we came into the market.
Interesting. Okay. I was mentioning before you joined that I was very curious to hear the story. So I think that's actually fascinating. And so many of us have personal issues like that have occurred and we haven't solved them. So kudos to you. Okay. So as Britni mentioned, one of the keys to this show is evaluating the headlines, right? So, some of the headlines we're seeing out there are that renters are prioritizing home-like amenities, or you think what multifamily amenities your renters want. So tell us a little bit about, what you think of these headlines and the role that technology is playing in the amenity space in multifamily. There's obviously a lot of competition for apartment renters out there. So how do these amenities come into play?
Well, I think when you say, and I agree with you, that residents want home-like amenities, I think they want things that are functional and that could replace things that would otherwise have to be in their home because they're in smaller apartments. Right. They're not ready to maybe make big investments into their furniture, into their own office because they're in a one-bedroom apartment. They don't have an office. So if you can offer them, let's say, a printer to handle all their document needs, printing, scanning, copying, whatever they need to do, and a coffee maker that's really high-end, delivers a great beverage, you're removing two things that they need to cram into their small apartment. Right. You're removing the expense of needing to buy those devices and the operating upkeep of those. And so that's why I think we've seen the headlines recently where we all know the ones that we're referring to, where renters would much rather have a convenient, functional amenity than they would a flashy golf simulator or a theater or a half basketball court. Those things are cool. And trust me, you will have some very devoted residents who love that. They will be a smaller percentage of your resident makeup, but you have to ask yourself, is it worth having, that big half basketball court for like the 5 to 10% of your people who are passionate about basketball versus, let's say, a PrintWithMe, which is roughly $200 a month, that serves 82% of units on average.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the trade-off that I think at least our clients, and there's many of them, they realize PrintWithMe is a no-brainer in that calculation. Of course, if you're a Class A building with a huge capital budget when you're building it, you can afford all of it, right? And that's great. But for buildings that are somewhat less capitalized than that, they do have to make trade-offs and decide which amenities they're going to have, and we end up usually being something that's above the fold for them.
Right. Yeah, of course. And Jonathan, you mentioned it briefly, right? Like people are now trying to fit office space and things into their apartment with the shift to work from home and hybrid work environments. So talk to us a little bit more about how that has shifted, resident demands and what they want and need as well.
Right. Well, we all know that work from home is now firmly in our minds. It may not be universally permissible for the whole workforce. A lot of people are going back to offices. But I think the majority of folks are now in this hybrid world where it's maybe 3 days in the office or some combination. And that means even if it's, let's say on average 3 days in the office, there's 2 extra full days that residents are in their apartment communities. And that's also driving more demand for all amenities, not just our categories, but that means there's more utilization of the fitness center because it's easier to get a workout in between meetings.
Sure.
The whole building needs to be thought through to be more to handle more traffic of residents actually dwelling there throughout the week. And by and large, these buildings were already kind of able to do that. You don't need to do too much, but you are seeing more utilization of amenities like ours, so printers and coffee, and other common amenities that just consumption goes up with when you have more dwell time.
Yeah.
No, that makes total sense. Have you tracked the utilization rates over time? Because you said 10 years ago, which shocks me, right? Because immediately I would think this was a post-pandemic great idea because people are now working hybrid so much more often. But do you have utilization rates from a decade ago, and have you seen it sort of, kind of like go off the charts in the past few years?
It's great that you asked that question. I just looked at the data again, and we have cohorts in multifamily that we installed 7-8 years ago when we first dabbled in multifamily. We first started with cafes, so those cohorts aren't relevant. But for multifamily, even the earliest cohorts, they saw a big spike during COVID for obvious reasons, and then the year after that was also somewhat elevated,
right?
And then it came down to about the same as pre-COVID levels, about 2019 utilization.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so COVID was definitely a shock, but now we're seeing we're back to normal. So people are utilizing amenities roughly the way they were pre-COVID.
Interesting.
Okay. So Jonathan, we've talked a lot about sort of the resident side of things, but obviously your services are supporting property managers in a big way. And I think property managers are feeling a lot of pressure, right, to make decisions and sort of cut through the noise of all of the PropTech and amenity options that are out there. So give us a little bit more of the perspective from the property managed side of things. Certainly how WithMe services support them, but also just in general, sort of your advice for property managers on how to make these decisions and what to look for when choosing amenities.
It's a great question. I think property managers need to be thoughtful about their clientele because every property is different.
Yeah.
And therefore, every selection of amenities is probably a little bit different for each property.
Yeah.
We work with managers who are quite thoughtful, and they do thorough surveying of their residents on a annual basis, and they look through the results, and they look at what residents appreciate, what they would love to see added to the community. We just worked with a large REIT that came to us to triple their PrintWithMe exposure because they got so much demand for it in their annual survey. This is 6 months ago. So you can appreciate when property managers do that. And I don't have like a one size fits all answer for you, because multifamily is such a diverse market of different types of communities that you really have to be thoughtful about fitting the right amenity to the right resident mix.
So I get it. You supply the printers and the coffee machines, but tell us, but you're in like sort of the PropTech sector, so tell us a little bit about the technology that supports this, these, I guess, pieces of hardware almost.
Yeah, that's what really makes us unique and different from any other provider of printers and coffee machines. Is we developed custom software that helps property managers limit the amount of consumption for these amenities.
Okay.
And that
cost in check.
Right. And that was really important. We first discovered that with printing. When we first entered the multifamily market, we got feedback very quickly from property managers and their regional managers saying that they wanted to keep the costs in check. They knew that there were some small number of residents who were overutilizing the printer for different reasons. You know, I heard that there were grad students in some building. There were just people running their own like work from home business and printing a lot of things.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Right.
And in a large building, that even a small percentage of those people can really add up and could drive a lot of printing costs. And so we got the insight that we need to think about a way to allow people to all have, every unit should have a free allowance of pages. So for example, a lot of properties choose to offer 10 free pages per month to each resident. And up until us coming into the market, there was no way to actually do that. We built the software that drives that. And that was a big insight and a big win, because then we could turn around to each property and offer a flat monthly fee because we can predict how much utilization there would be. And right out of the gate, we were saving a lot of those properties about 50% on their monthly budget.
Right.
Coffee, same thing. When we got the insight for coffee, which actually came from a printer client. So he was, at the time, he was managing 20 high-end buildings across mostly the Midwest. And he said, Jonathan, you should really look at coffee as another product line, because there's similar dynamics here. The vendors aren't great. The technology's outdated. There's overutilization. And it all clicked for me as soon as he was saying that there's a good opportunity here. We do the same thing. Our app will give an allowance of, say, 10 cups of coffee a month to each resident. And if they want to use more than that, they just pay per cup after that point.
So, Jonathan, do you think that more of this automation is going to continue to drive multifamily amenities going forward? And then certainly we always read about these concerns, right, that technology is going to replace humans and all of that good stuff. What are sort of your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I do think automation, whether driven by pure software development or AI, you know, they're very similar. The automation will affect almost the entire resident experience and staff experience on these properties. So there's a lot of folks who can speak much more deeply and eloquently than I can on AI and multifamily. We just got back from PropTech, which is the biggest conference annually for new technology trends in multifamily, and there were just so many panels on AI.
I'm sure.
And you know, we're going to be, so in the amenity space, we're not the first focus for AI and for automation. I think a lot of dollars, a lot of attention is going toward the leasing process. It's nurturing leads through the life cycle, because there's a lot of like human interaction today that is inefficient and often like isn't actually executed well, just because there's human error. So AI has low-hanging fruit on the leasing side, on the very resident-facing sides of things.
Yeah.
But then when you get into like the operations workflows, AI is starting to make some headway. Even for us as a vendor, we're leveraging it, and we're starting to leverage in certain small places to make our fulfillment of our services more efficient, which allows us to keep our cost structure efficient and therefore our pricing efficient and low.
Right.
So we'll continue to see more of it. As we all know, centralization is a big theme in multifamily. AI is only going to help with that because it's going to make a lot of workflows just automated and allow the site team members that are still on site, or maybe they are centralized, wherever they're actually working, they're going to be able to focus on the higher value things that they should do with their time.
Yeah.
And it's a win for everyone.
Yeah. So I guess you work with some of the largest multifamily owners, developers out there. And you were just at this conference. What are you hearing from these property owners, and what other pain points, I guess, are you thinking about taking away, or trying to take away, or are they thinking about trying to remove for their apartment dwellers? What are we looking at going forward?
Well, so the operators at this conference, they tend to be leaders in technology and operations.
Yeah.
They have a couple of different sets of stakeholders, well, several, right? I think most of the executives in that room are thinking about, how can I be more efficient with my property operations, right? Just that's the big question, right? They're looking for insights for new technology, and efficiency. Yeah, it does come back to automation in a lot of instances.
Yeah.
Certainly that's not all about it. Like, there are other ways to be efficient, but we all know that site teams spend just so much time doing a wide plethora of things. Like, if you actually create a property manager job description, it would probably run like 10 pages because they do everything. And they're really impressive people. And I know many of them who either started there or, like my property manager in my building, he runs everything. And like you just couldn't even write down everything he does.
Right.
So the insight, I think, is executives know they need to try as best they can to eliminate some of those bullet points and lean on vendors usually who can help do that, because it's usually the vendors that are providing this technology. So we're all of us as vendors, including us, we're trying to take things off the plate of the on-site team. So we're automating their supply ordering for printing and coffee. They don't have to even think about that. The inventory management, we're handling all that. Those are a couple fewer bullet points, I should say, that site teams don't have to worry about anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, Jonathan. Well, we started off asking you your take on headlines in the space. And so now we want to give you the opportunity to sort of write your own headline. What would you like to see written out there about amenities and PropTech and multifamily?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. Do I get Jeopardy music first? Let me think. All right, I'll go with this. Multifamily executives eagerly waiting for automation technology to become prime time.
Okay.
Or to go prime time. Yeah. I'll say that because at PropTech, a lot of the executives are feeling like we're at the precipice for this, but they're not quite sold yet on a lot of the technology. They're kind of like they're adopting a wait and see approach,
see it work.
They're piloting in a couple places because, let's be honest, right? Like, there's a lot of noise in AI right now. Everybody is trying to brand themselves as an AI company. Literally, we saw rebrands where some of these technologies that don't even seem to have anything to do with AI are now like, our company is now a .ai company. And there's a lot of skepticism.
Sure.
And let's be honest, real estate people tend to be risk averse, so they're waiting and seeing, but they know it's coming. I think executives pretty much all across the board understand the power of AI. They're just waiting for that technology to mature and harness into applications that will be really ready for prime time to come in, plug in, and automate things in their stack.
They want to pick the winner.
Yeah,
makes sense.
I think that was right on.
Yeah.
All right, Jonathan. Well, we appreciate having you today. I think this was a really interesting conversation. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for the good questions.
All right, Heather. Well, that was another interesting one.
It was.
We actually haven't really done too much specific on amenities and PropTech. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
what
I feel
did
like
you think?
a lot of our building owners talk about amenities, but it was great to hear from somebody providing them and narrowing. I think it's so interesting that they've narrowed their amenity focus to these conveniences that, I'm all day long. Give me something that makes my life easier, not something that is beautiful, but I'm not going to use.
No, for sure. I think right now that is the conversation, right? Everyone's trying to do everything and there's so much out there, but I think Jonathan and WithMe have really found their niche and it works.
And it sounds like they stick to their knitting and they do it well. So that's really cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, another great episode. Thanks everyone for joining us today and we'll see you next time.
This podcast is a production of Gregory FCA. If you enjoyed our discussion, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts